We have been revisiting some of the greatest sets in television history. But on Dynasty, it wasn't about the sets. It was about the fashion created by Nolan Miller.
Nolan Miller.
Nolan Miller.
Nolan Miller.
Beverly Hills' own Nolan Miller.
This, I know, was something that Nolan was very proud of. Nolan won the Emmy for costume design.
The clothing became a character.
Nolan said when he was nominated, he said, "When I go, this and my story will be left to you." And so that's why we're here, to carry this forward and to bring his story to fruition. Nolan first met Aaron in a flower shop. He was aspiring to be a designer. Aaron was aspiring to be a director, producer. Started a friendship and told each other, whoever makes it first will pull the other one along.
When was the first time that you met Nolan?
I went in for a fitting. I remember he was impeccably dressed. I think he was wearing a gray suit and a tie. I love men who wear ties.
As soon as Joan came in, it was magic.
What was the first thing he designed for you?
It was for the Academy Awards, and it was very dramatic.
Costume is everything to me and a character. We're competing with shows like Dynasty, and they have the most magnificent clothes. We have to up it.
Nolan was the kind of person who was immediately ingratiating. So he was able to create bridges among different types of people that others could not.
Does Mr. Miller know me, or does Mr. Miller know me?
Nolan's father was a Cherokee and his mother was English. He lived in fear of his father. He said one night my dad came home and came into my room because I was playing classical music, and he said, "I'm not going to have a son that's a pansy." Texas was nothing but pain for Nolan. It was a place he would always want to run away from and never look back. Nolan just knew he wanted a better life.
I was very taken with movies at a very early age.
And Nolan would go to the movie theaters and he'd watch movies, and he just knew I want to go to that place where they make these movies and people are happy. Matilda Gettings Gray Stream introduced her daughter to Nolan and thought that they would be a good match. Nolan realized the importance of having someone like Sandra.
Promiscuity can be a symptom of deeper, unresolved wounds from childhood trauma, where intimacy becomes confused with sex addiction.
I know for Nolan, hiring me as an escort, he had to be discreet. I believe that Nolan was one of the really truly bisexual men I've ever met.
Matilda was aware that Nolan had affairs. She didn't know about the men, but she knew about the women. Their marriage was not an easy one. Sandra pretty much was an alcoholic through the entire marriage. Nolan had gotten to a point where he was going to divorce Sandra. He just said, "I can't do this anymore." Nolan had said one night after work, "I want you to come with me. I want to take you somewhere." We pull off into a parallel alley. Nolan said, "Have you ever been here?" And he started laughing. He's like, "You don't know what Vaseline Alley is?" He's like, "Watch this." And he turns his lights off and he honks his horn. And all these hookers start coming out. "Hey, Nolan." And he's like, "Hey, hey." And Nolan just looked at me and thought it was the funniest thing. He thought it was a wonderful thing. And I was stunned.
The only time I saw Nolan upset was when he brought over the Streisand auction catalog. He was coming over to dinner and he said, "See this dress? It says Donna Karan. That's mine, that's mine, that's mine."
People with money and people with power like to recreate history.
I didn't know till recently that the dresses listed as Donna Karan actually still had Nolan's labels.
Nolan always had problems with money. If Nolan made $100,000, he'd spend $200,000.
He was a big party giver, gift giver. He loved it.
He used to give the best parties. He had the most expensive flowers, the finest wines, the best caviar.
Once I had partnered with Nolan in the company, I realized the funds weren't there. Our employees were holding checks for the past 2 to 3 months. They haven't been able to deposit their checks. My goal was to get the company back on track. And then here was Nolan throwing this lavish party, and it just smacked me in the face. Nolan disowned to me how much debt he was in. My father will financially take care of you And this business, actually the last 12 years of Nolan's life, I owned the company.
When Nolan got sick, he was pissed off. He said, all those fucking people smoking around me, that's why I got lung cancer.
The end of his life, when it was Renee and I, alone in a dark room, as Nolan took his final breath. Nobody else was there. As the sun went down, we each took turns sprinkling Nolan's ashes in a rose garden right outside of the guest house that Nolan would always stay.
That rose garden, I have to say, has flowered ever since.
I could while away the hours, conferring with the flowers, consulting with the rain. And my head I'd be scratching, while my thoughts were busy hatching. If I only had a brain, I'd unravel every riddle for any individual in trouble or in pain. And perhaps I'd deserve you and be even worthier of you if I only had a brain.